Hello everyone, my name is Mercy, and I wanted to just make a little video real quick, just talking about something that I'm very, very passionate about, and something that kind of deals with what I do on my other channel, which is mainly playing horror games. And there's a lot of other games that I also play, like indie games, or just random games, or maybe there's a really cool game that just came out that I'm like, whoa, I'm really, piped about that one, or I don't know, it's on sale or something. I don't know, anything that is like that, right? So there's a certain genre that I am, obviously very invested in, which is horror. Now, why is horror so cool? Well, horror is so cool because there's a lot of things you can do with horror. You can, create any type of atmosphere or aesthetic that your style that you really, really want to. I also, sorry, if I'm like out of breath, kinda, I just got back from work, so I just finished working, but I don't know why this came up in my head. I just felt like talking about it for a little bit because now I got this channel and I'm like, you know what? Why not? So, something that really, really like got to me when I was younger, and my sister is much more, or was much more akin to horror when she was, younger, right? Or, well, not really younger, she's much older than me, so it would be a little bit different there, so maybe it's not as much of the same, but she really liked horror, and I never really cared for horror. And obviously, as a kid, why would I care about horror? I was much more into stuff like Godzilla or Halo or Batman or anything of the sorts, right? And then, as I got deeper into my teens, further into it, I thought, maybe horror was a little cooler, or it was really cool stuff that got me into horror, I feel like, gruesome stuff like Doom or, Batman's already awesome and dark, right? So there's also that. So where am I going with this? So horror games specifically, what really, really got me into playing horror games? And I feel like there's a huge niche of this on YouTube already. Now, I'm not one of the people that really watches other people play video games. I really just can't do it unless I want to see someone else's reaction on something that I think was really, really cool, like maybe Halo 2, or I don't know, maybe a scene in Arkham Knight or something. Usually I'd see that stuff or watch that stuff when I was younger, so nowadays I don't watch anyone play games, so I don't really care about, I don't care about looking into that, but obviously there's big content creators, or bigger content creators, way bigger content creators, like PewDiePie, Markiplier, Jacksepticeye, Corey X Kenshin. There's a few others, probably way more than that nowadays, of also playing horror games. But those are like the first 4 or 5 that top of my head that a lot of people really, really like. Which a lot of them, honestly, I never really got into much. I feel like PewDiePie was probably the only one that I'd maybe watch once in a while, but that was something that I really, really miss. So like that's first off the thing that I really, really miss about YouTube was, and maybe it's not really a thing I miss about YouTube. It's just that, for some reason, a lot of content creators nowadays. I'm not trying to say like they don't do their own thing or anything like that, right? But like you can kind of tell, and I understand that there's a lot that people don't know about, and I don't watch that type of genre, so it's a little bit different there. I'm so sorry if I'm all over the place. This is a mix-up. This is my second channel. Deal with it. So there's a bunch of YouTube channels out there that do different sorts of things and stuff. And I feel like, and I'm not trying to say this with like the biggest ones out there or anything, but I know with a lot of bigger horror channels nowadays, there's usually what feels to be a huge difference and a huge gap between how it used to be 10 years ago compared to how it is now. But what I think is really, really cool about a long time ago was that you could play any horror game that you wanted to do, not just the big popular one like Resident Evil, or now Silent Hill is, popping up out of the breaks, or Five Nights at Freddy's was a huge one, or maybe Poppy Playtime or Garten of Banban, those types of games are like, the bigger types of, or maybe just mascot horror in general. And I think there's a huge, 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 like, big thing out there that is underappreciated, that a lot of people just don't really care to look into, or, there's not a lot there in general for people to take in, which, I mean, not to take in, sorry. My words are so bad. Oh my god. There's a lot of horror games out there on Steam or itch.io, I think, which I haven't even gotten to yet, by the way, but, probably GOG as well, and also just a bunch of other websites that I bet have a lot of horror games that are published on them that, in GameJolt as well, that don't get a lot of recognition, which to me is like something that I really, really want to do. I want to show those games. Now, horror games in particular, when I was a kid, there wasn't really a lot that I really knew about, and obviously, I would say that I would grow up with watching stuff like Stampy Longhead and Dan TDM the most, probably, of all things, so I know Dan TDM, he played some horror stuff when I was much, much younger. Not that I really remember hardly any of it anyway, but, like, you know, I would remember certain things that he would obviously check out and play. And a lot of it wasn't really like indie horror or anything like that, but there is a specific area on the internet that is specifically indie horror games, which is, you know, if you don't know, actually, I can't even explain it to you. I don't even know what indie means, but you know what I mean, right? Like, it's its own little thing, right? Where, like, you're not going to find it as much. It's not the big popular thing, right? It's much smaller creators creating something like that, which is why I'm so grateful to see other, you know, cool indie horror games, whether they're short or whether they're long. Like, you know, I played The Black Whale recently, which was a little short horror game, or, you know, I played Toy Zombies not too long ago, and that was a pretty, I wouldn't say long horror game or anything, but it felt longer than the average short experience that you would get out of a horror game, right? But it's a much, much smaller creator doing something that's really, really cool, right? And I love that. But why do I really love that? How did I get into it? How did I get into horror games in general? And again, the only reason why I'm making this video, because I was like, hey, why not? Why not explain why I really, really like horror games? And to tell you the best I could say with it, honestly, is I don't know. I mean, honestly, who really gets into anything, honestly? But I can tell you, outside of YouTube, outside of the realms of any Let's Player playing some horror game that as a kid I was like, you know, I don't want to play that game because, you know, obviously on my iPad or my tablet or whatever you want to call it back then in the day, you know, when you would pull something like that up, that would be horrifying. That would be the worst, like, thing to do as a kid, you know? But I still remember that as a kid, specifically, I think, two instances at the very least, and I think it scared my sister as well. There was Five Nights at Freddy's, and I don't know which Five Nights at Freddy's this was, but it was either the first or the second one. Definitely wasn't the third or the fourth. God forbid the fourth one. You know, and then there's also Slenderina. I think it was The Cellar or something, which I ended up playing a lot, or no, it wasn't The Cellar. It was some Slenderina mobile game that I might have played on my channel, I'm not sure, but I don't think I did. So, it was either one of those. I mean, it was both of those, really. But I do remember an instance when I was much, much younger. And I'm not one of those people who rage where I'm going to start throwing stuff or anything like that. Or, you know, when I scream, I'm going to throw my phone at the wall. I know some people do that sometimes. You know, sometimes I'll have that reaction similar to that. But, you know, when I was a kid, obviously, especially then, I wouldn't do something like that, right? Or at least not on purpose. But you know, when I was playing Five Nights at Freddy's, I think it was two, but it might have been one. No, it might have been both, honestly, because I think I had both of them, but I wouldn't want to ever play them, and I never finished them, obviously, because they were too scary. But I remember that I was playing the game, and I don't know who jump scared me. I think it was Bonnie from the first game, if I'm not wrong. And it scared the living hell out of me. And I did not ever, I don't think I ever touched those games ever again. I was like, you know what? I'm never going to play a horror game ever again. Now, I did play Slenderina at my grandma's house with my sister was right by me. And I actually thought that would be really, really funny to play something like that. So I ended up playing that as a joke. And even that, I was like, you know, I can't do this no more. I can't do this. So I gave it to her. And I was like, you could play this game because she keeps popping up in our faces, right? And I was probably only like 12 years old, you know, I probably was like, I was pretty close to being a teenager. And so, you know, that was kind of, you know, maybe it was a little bit younger, but it was freaky. It was scary, and I couldn't stand it. Just that little bit of jump scare, right? And I think jump scares is the really big thing that gets to me, but I think atmosphere is especially the mood that, you know, builds it up the most, builds it up the best. Now, I can also bring this up too, where I am not a huge fan of horror movies. I could probably explain why in like in another video if I wanted to, but I really don't get the appeal of horror movies that much, and I never think hardly any of them, at least nowadays, are that scary in my opinion. Now, when I grew up, one of the first horror movies that I've ever saw when I was like 6 or 7 or maybe 8. You know, my best friend at the time, she would also watch it with me for the first time, I think, and we would be obsessed over it. We would be obsessed over this particular horror movie, which it wasn't rated R or anything. It was PG-13, and I still love this movie to this day, as well as its sequel, which is Insidious. And Insidious, say what you want about the films, but Insidious, especially the first movie, and also I would say the second, have a specific 2010s mood. I mean, the movie came out in like 2010, but there is an atmosphere, and a lot of the atmosphere to me is the music. The music in particular is a very, very deep part of that movie to me, because to me it is iconic. To other people it's like, oh, it's just another movie or whatever. Maybe they'll bring up some other movie like Sinister or The Conjuring or something, you know, movies I don't really know much about. I haven't even seen Sinister, but I'm just bringing up other horror movies, right? So, you know, the Insidious was kind of like that for me, and I really, 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 when I got the most scared, I think, of any horror game, and I don't think I can ever even really return to it. And the same kind of goes for Silent Hill, except I actually beat Silent Hill 2. Silent Hill 2, specifically Silent Hill 2, because I didn't really play the first one or the third one or anything, or anything after that for the most part, right? The original Silent Hill 2, not the remake at all, the first one, the original, has a specific mood and atmosphere that I played when I was almost, I don't know how old I was. I might have been 17, maybe 16 or 17. I would have been probably 17, yeah. And it was horrific, that whole entire experience, but it was mainly because of the atmosphere, and the music was a huge contribution to that. And I don't think that the Resident Evil games, or you know, some of the newer just titles of horror games, I'm not trying to say they aren't scary by any means because they don't have music in them, but I think one of the best things, and I've talked about this in a past video before, about a lot of horror games, isn't that it's all quiet all the time, isn't that, you know, it's all jump scares all the time. Sure, that is really, really scary, but it is building up to that. It is the atmosphere, is the essence. How unique is it? Is the music good? Is it well done? You know, is it presented exactly the way where you think you are going to scare the player? And the biggest thing, the worst thing of that, not the worst really, but it's the worst feeling for me, is Amnesia: The Dark Descent. That game, I don't think I can come back to, because that game, that was the game that introduced me, in my opinion, really, to horror. Because I started playing that game. I think I got it on the collection on the Xbox One. Yeah, I definitely did. And I started playing it through the hallways and everything like that, and it scared me to death. It scared me so bad, just the feel of it, and hearing things, just hearing things, and it would drag you to the ground. I don't know if anyone's played Amnesia: The Dark Descent who's watching this video, but it drags you to the down and pushes you downward, and there's a fog, there's so much that you can talk about, and I barely got far. Once I started moving and it dragged me to the floor, I'm done. I leave the game. I never play it again. You know, or, well, I actually did check it out later on, but, you know, I never, ever, ever, I don't, that's the one game with the atmosphere, and it's so beautiful how it looks, because it's Castle Brandenburg, and I think it's an iconic location, in my opinion, just by the start, just by the start. And maybe nowadays I would be able to play Amnesia: The Dark Descent normally, but back then, or especially way after, I can't do it. I couldn't do it. Because it's not that I have some kind of popular bias where I'm like, this was the scariest game in the early 2010s. No, this was a 2010s game, and it scared me the life out of me. And this was like 2020, so this was like 6 years ago, and I could never ever get back into it. It is horrifying. I don't know, it's like a very specific example. I don't know how the hell I went through Silent Hill 2, because I actually did the same exact thing, where once you go into, or you leave the fog, which the fog was already scary enough, when you go inside of the dark, I think it's the west the Westwood Apartments, I think it's called. I'm not sure, but it is the apartments, the first apartments that you enter, or the first building that you enter. It's completely dark. You need your flashlight, and it is. Oh my god! It that was when I was like, oh no, I can't play this game anymore. I'm never gonna touch it again. And eventually I did, and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna push myself to my hardest. And it was a beautiful game. It's a masterpiece, and it's in my top two favorite video games of all time, next to Halo 2. I could never really put either way between it, but Silent Hill 2 is the only video game in history that made me tear up a bit. So, that is an experience in itself. So, I don't know why I really made this. I mean, it's basically just me explaining, like, you know what? There's a lot of things that really come into the grain as to why I really like horror games, but I could explain real quick why I really, really like the indie game niche a lot. It is, and I'm already, it's really simple. It's because they're different. It's because they're unique. There's a lot of them are very similar, and I really don't like. I've mentioned this before. I really don't like the reuse of a lot of things nowadays of like first person PS1 horror. Like I don't know if that's just like a thing of mine or what it is, I mean, I'm a big PS2 or I'm a big PlayStation 2 era of graphics, like the 2000s, early 2000s to mid 2000s, like are the absolute best, especially early 2000s, right? That is my favorite era of gaming in general. But it works so well with horror as well. And PS1 graphics aren't bad or anything. It's just that they always you'll kind of see that a lot in a lot of horror games, which, I'm not trying to say they're bad or anything by any means. They're probably great games that I played, especially. But PS1, there's a lot of PS1 games, or they're not PS1 games, but they're PlayStation 1 graphics. That's basically the inspiration for it, obviously. But they're all in first person, and, nothing's wrong with that, but it kind of gets annoying after reusing it after a while, if you know what I'm trying to say. And it's the same thing that goes with PT, right? Like, there's so many. I've never played PT before, but I know, I think I know, or I understand that there's like a loop that goes around with it, right? And a big factor in that, or a big reuse of that, is obviously a lot of games are basically copying the same exact formula every single time. And it is extremely annoying to see, and I just don't understand. I've never really understood it. I've never understood it at all. I don't see the appeal of it. And I'm gonna be honest, not all the games, but like a lot of the games that I played, they're horrible. Like the PT ripoff, not all of them. But I probably mentioned in the videos where I played them, they're not that good. But I don't know what else to really say about that. So yeah, that's all I really have to say about anything really. Again, I mean, if you've seen my channel, my other channel called Mercyzilla, or Mercy, or Mercy's World soon. Obviously, there's like a huge thing that I love playing horror games. It's so much fun because it gets your adrenaline up, and it really depends, because like a lot of them don't really scare me as much as like I wish they were. It's usually the ones again with the atmosphere, a build up, and I feel like especially freedom. You need some freedom in horror games, by the way, in the sense that it's not a linear path of how to get to your objective every single time. If you know what I'm trying to say, is like, with AI and stuff, right? Artificial, not AI, like, the new type of AI, but, with the monster or enemy that's going after you, and the area that you're in, how is that presented, you know? So there's always a lot of stuff that goes into it. But I love horror games so much. I thought I would never like something like that. I think Resident Evil 7's demo was also one that I tried getting into when I was younger, but obviously I left right away and didn't really want to see what happens with it because it scared me so much. So, and that was when I was like, maybe not that specific instance, but I was scared of horror games when I was like 13 or 14. And I forgot to mention Resident Evil. Resident Evil really got me into horror because I tried playing Resident Evil 0. I was like, this is not good for me. I don't really care for Resident Evil, whatever. And then I played Resident Evil 4, and I was like, oh my god. I know that's not as scary as some people might say it is, but it was scary to me when I was younger because that brought me into it and I got addicted. And that was the game that basically brought me, or made me leave playing the same franchises every single time. It would be one after the other. I would play Doom, or no, it wouldn't be Doom. It would be I would play Halo, and I was like, you know what? I don't like Halo. Or I love Halo, but I would be like, you know what? I'm not in love with Halo anymore. I'm in love with Arkham again. I'm gonna be on my Arkham like fatigue, or not fatigue. Arkham arc or something, and then it'll be Doom, and I'm addicted to Doom. This is my life now. And then Resident Evil broke that barrier, and it told me maybe you should be playing some other stuff. And then years down the line, got a PC. Now I'm playing a bunch of horror games online. So I am really, really happy for that. Anyway, I'm going to stop talking right there. I got to go very, very, very soon. So with that being said, thank you guys so much for watching. If you're going to listen to my little TED Talk, pep talk, whatever you want to call it, next time, maybe I'll make another video. So with that being said, thank you guys for watching. My name is Mercy. I'll see you guys in the next video. That's my second video.